for-hire vehicle license storage program. In 2020, the TLC created a COVID-19 for-hire vehicle license storage program to provide relief to vehicle license holders who could not afford to retain or repair their vehicles during the pandemic. The program ended on August 31st of this year. For-hire vehicle license holders were notified multiple times, and they were required to be taken out of storage by the end date of the program. In an effort to help owners, the TLC created a new short-term storage program for-hire vehicle licensees called the Short-Term FHV License Storage Program. The new program allows active FHV licensees to put their for-hire vehicle license in storage once during every 2-year license term for up to 90 days. While in storage, the TLC will not enforce insurance or inspection requirements. At the end of the COVID-19 for-hire vehicle license program, how many licenses were still in storage?
Thank you, Chair. As of last week, we still have 2,684 FHV licenses that are still in storage. Many of these are coming out. We are processing them as quickly as we can.
And what happened to these licenses?
Many of the licenses came out of storage and were attached to new vehicles. So we're seeing that as the industry has recovered, FHV owners are finding it to be a financially good proposition to take their license out of storage and attach it to a vehicle. We have seen some that have just failed to renew, but the bulk of these are coming out of storage and are getting back on the road.
So the question was for the old program. Mm-hmm.
Oh, for the old program?
Yeah.
These are still the numbers for the old program. The new program doesn't take effect until the end of October. So we're still processing the licenses that are coming out of storage from the old program.
Okay. And what were the total cost of fines and violation fees for these licenses that were left in storage past the due date of the program's ending?
I don't believe there were any fines that were attached to leaving them in the program. If a license holder did not take their license out of storage, they simply forfeited their license if they didn't reactivate it. We do have these 2,684, though, I believe, are owners who are in the process of taking their license out of storage, putting it on a vehicle, and obtaining insurance for it. But I'm certainly happy to confirm that with our licensing department to ensure that there's not additional fines.
And can you confirm whether or not there were any forfeited licenses?
Absolutely. I can get you the number of forfeited licenses, yes.
And what's going to happen with the forfeited licenses? Are they going to be reissued or?
So we currently have a pause on issuing new for-hire vehicle licenses with an exception for wheelchair accessible vehicle licenses. One of the reasons why we wanted to end this sort of ad hoc storage program we stood up during the pandemic was to really understand the universe of active licenses out there as we evaluated if and how many more licenses to issue in the future. So there aren't plans to issue a one-for-one forfeited license new FHV license, but it certainly goes into our evaluation of how many new licenses to issue in the future.
FHV vehicle licenses restricted to electric vehicles. Have all 1,000 licenses been issued, and what is the new issuance, and if they have been, has that been deemed successful?
Thank you, Council Member. All 1,000 licenses have been applied for, is what I can say, but we don't have the 1,000 vehicles on the road yet. When we were establishing our license issuance, because we had a finite amount of licenses, what we didn't want was for drivers to go out and purchase a vehicle only to not be able to obtain one of the limited number of licenses we had. So the way we did this was we had drivers sign a statement of intent, which was basically a ticket to get a license once you've got your vehicle. So after you received your ticket, you had 90 days to acquire a vehicle. But we have been somewhat generous in allowing drivers extra time because we understand the constraints on finding vehicles at the moment.
Sure. And I mean, I guess the intent, what's the intention behind giving them out? I know we have hopefully more than 1,000 applicants, but at least 1,000. Do we know if the priority is to give to individuals or to give to companies with EV fleets? I know we're seeing a variety of options right now for drivers, some that can't necessarily afford to buy it, are leasing it from companies or setting up different systems for themselves.
Certainly, thank you for the question. For the 1,000 licenses we issued, 600 were dedicated to drivers because it was very important to us that drivers that may be stuck in leases today have access to their own license, their own small business, but also recognizing the point that we need these companies to build charging infrastructure, and many of them need their own licenses to do so. We wanted to make sure that 400 were available to anybody. But all 400 of those did not go specifically to corporations. Drivers were able to access those as well. I think one of the lessons we learned on our first round of EV license issuance is, one, there's incredible demand from drivers out there for these things. We had a wait list in the thousands for them. All 1,000 were snapped up within minutes of opening this. So we know there's the demand out there. And we also know that trying to sort of apportion the licenses between the different sectors, between drivers, between companies, that also creates a lot of unnecessary confusion. Both drivers and companies need these licenses to get out of leases, to build out the charging infrastructure. So any additional, I think, license issuance we may do in the future will take the lessons that we learned from our first round into consideration.
Okay, thank you. I know this industry itself, or the sector itself, has a lot of different places that we have to hone in on a focus with leasing, with our local drivers, and that we're maybe part of bases, that our bases are losing folks every single week. I appreciate that answer. So in FY23, there were over 78,000 TLC driver licenses issued, a dramatic increase from the 47,000 plus in FY22 and 55,000 plus in FY21. In addition, 20,548 of those licenses were new licenses issued, which is also about 5,000 more in FY22 and about 16,000 more in FY21. What was the cause of increase in driver licenses issued?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned previously, we're seeing increased activity across all sectors of the for-hire industry, taxis, FHVs, and the licenses that we issue for drivers are universal driver licenses. They allow you to drive for taxis, for Uber, for your local livery base, and jump between those as you please. So as passengers are coming back, as trips are increasing, as the per-trip revenue that drivers are making increases, I think we're seeing more drivers see this as a good economic opportunity to get their license. On top of that, the total license issued, I believe, includes our renewals. Our driver licenses are on 3-year renewal cycles, so some years will naturally have more license issued or more license renewals than others.
And was there any concern around saturation of the market?
We have not seen any saturation of the market. We have been monitoring driver pay. We've been monitoring trip volumes. Importantly, on the Uber and Lyft side of this, we're also monitoring what we call utilization rates. So these are the times drivers spend with the passengers, which is a good indication about where supply and demand are at any given moment. We want high utilization rates. This means we've got passengers in the backs of our vehicles, that drivers are making more money because they're doing more trips. And we've seen the utilization rate for the industry hover at about 58%, which is where it was prior to the pandemic, and what we believe is, has resulted in, I think, short response time for passengers, but without a flood of drivers and vehicles on the road.